You've been told your whole life that something is wrong with you. Not loudly, not directly, but constantly, in the ads, in the feeds, in the quiet comparison that runs in the background of an ordinary Tuesday. You should be calmer, more successful, more positive, more something. And the strange thing is, the harder you chase that feeling of being enough, the further it seems to get. This book exists to tell you why. The problem was never that you don't care enough. The problem is that you care about too many things that don't deserve it, and the few that do, you've been ignoring. That's the entire argument, stripped down to its bones. Mark Manson calls it the backwards law. The more you chase a feeling, the more it slips away. Chase happiness directly, and you become anxious about not being happy. Chase certainty, and you become consumed by doubt. The things we want most in life, peace, confidence, love, only arrive as side effects of something else. Something harder. Something most self-help books are too afraid to say out loud. So let's start there, with the first chapter, because it sets the tone for everything that follows. Manson opens with an unusual hero, a man named Charles Bukowski, a drunk, a failure, a man who spent decades writing poems nobody read and getting rejected by nearly everyone who mattered. And yet Bukowski didn't try to fix himself. He didn't read a single self-help book. He just kept writing, badly, persistently, without needing the world to validate him first. Eventually, in his late 40s, a publisher took a chance on him. He became one of the most read poets in America. Not because he tried harder to be good. Because he stopped trying to avoid being bad. This is the backwards law in action. Trying to feel positive all the time is itself a negative experience, because it requires constant self-monitoring, constant comparison to an imagined ideal self who never struggles. Have you ever noticed that the people who seem most at peace are rarely the ones performing peace on social media? That's not a coincidence. Real comfort with yourself doesn't look like a highlight reel. It looks like indifference to whether you're impressive at all. Manson isn't arguing for nihilism here, even though the title might suggest it. He's making a precise distinction. Not giving a damn about everything is just as broken as giving a damn about everything. The goal isn't apathy. The goal is selectivity. You have a finite number of damns to give in this life, a finite store of time, energy, attention. Most people spend that budget carelessly, caring deeply about what strangers think of their vacation photos, while the actual architecture of their life, their health, their relationships, their work, goes quietly unattended. The question this book keeps asking, chapter after chapter, is simple: what, specifically, deserves your care? And what doesn't? That question carries us into the second chapter, where Manson redefines happiness itself, not as an emotional state you arrive at, but as an engine that runs on problems. This is the part of the book most people get wrong on first read, so let's slow down here. Manson's claim is that life is not about eliminating problems. Life is, by its very nature, an endless stream of problems. Solve one, another appears. This isn't pessimism. It's structural. A person without problems doesn't experience peace, they experience boredom, and boredom is its own kind of suffering. So happiness doesn't come from the absence of problems. It comes from solving problems you actually care about, ones aligned with values you've chosen on purpose. He illustrates this with a brutal, simple thought experiment. Imagine the life of a rock star: money, fame, endless parties, and ask why so many rock stars end up destroyed by addiction and depression despite having solved the problems most people spend their whole lives chasing. The answer is that solving the wrong problems doesn't produce happiness. It just produces new, more expensive problems. Money doesn't remove your problems. It changes which problems you have. The man worried about rent becomes the man worried about which yacht to buy, and worry, it turns out, doesn't actually care how much zeros are in your bank account. So here's the question worth sitting with for a second: if happiness requires a problem worth solving, what problem have you been avoiding because solving it felt too uncomfortable? Most people don't lack opportunities for growth. They lack the willingness to stay in the discomfort long enough for growth to happen. Which brings us to the third chapter, and one of the sharper cultural diagnoses in the book, the idea that we are living through an epidemic of perceived exceptionalism. Manson tells a story from his own adolescence, a humiliating public failure on a youth talent show, and uses it to unpack something most people his audience's age have absorbed without realizing it, a quiet, persistent belief that they are destined for something extraordinary. Social media didn't invent this feeling, but it amplified it past anything previous generations experienced. Every scroll is a comparison against curated extraordinary lives, and the implicit message becomes, you should be exceptional too, or something has gone wrong. But here's the reframe. Most people are average. That's not an insult. It's a mathematical necessity. If everyone were exceptional, exceptional would lose all meaning. The tyranny isn't being average, it's believing average is unacceptable, which turns an ordinary life into a constant referendum on your own worth. Manson argues that the entitled mindset comes in two forms that look opposite but share the same root. One says, I'm special, so I deserve good things without doing the work. The other says, I'm uniquely broken, so nothing good will ever happen to me. Both are forms of the same self-obsession, both put you, and your specialness or your suffering, at the center of the universe. The actual antidote isn't more self-esteem. It's less self-focus. People who quietly do good work without needing recognition for it tend to be far more at peace than people chasing the feeling of being special. That naturally leads into the fourth chapter, which might be the philosophical center of gravity for the whole book, the idea that your values determine the quality of your problems. Manson lays out what he calls good values and bad values, and the distinction matters more than almost anything else in this book. A good value is something based in reality, something you can control, and something that actually benefits you and the people around you. A bad value is something superstitious, something outside your control, or something that creates needless suffering or harm. Money, for example, is a famously bad value when held as the primary metric of self-worth, because your bank balance depends on 1,000 variables outside your control: the markets, luck, other people's decisions. Tying your sense of worth to something you can't control is a guaranteed recipe for anxiety. Compare that to a value like honesty, which is entirely within your control. You either tell the truth or you don't. No external circumstance can take that away from you. People who build their identity around values like honesty, vulnerability, and standing up for what they believe, even when it's uncomfortable, end up far steadier than people chasing pleasure, material success, or being liked, because those depend entirely on forces beyond their grip. Manson takes this further with a quietly radical idea: pain is part of the process of finding better values, not a sign you've chosen wrong. He even goes so far as to argue that we should seek out certain forms of suffering, what he calls choosing your struggle. Not suffering for its own sake, but the deliberate discomfort of pursuing something difficult and meaningful, because the alternative is suffering that finds you anyway, except this time without purpose attached to it. You're going to struggle no matter what. The only real choice you get is which struggle. And this is exactly where the fifth chapter picks up, the principle of responsibility, which Manson frames through one of the most quietly devastating distinctions in the entire book: the difference between fault and responsibility. You are not always at fault for what happens to you. Life is unfair. People hurt you. Circumstances beyond your control land on your doorstep uninvited. But you are always responsible for how you respond, for the meaning you assign to what happened, and for what you choose to do next. This isn't a comforting idea, and Manson doesn't pretend it is. He tells the story of a man he calls Jimmy, a charismatic but deeply self-destructive figure who built his entire identity around being a victim of everyone else's failures, never his own decisions. Jimmy isn't a villain in this story. He's a mirror. Because the victim mentality feels safe. It removes the terrifying responsibility of having to choose, having to risk being wrong, having to be the author of your own outcome. But that safety comes at an enormous cost. It removes your power too. If everything bad that happens to you is someone else's fault, then you have no actual control over your own life, ever. The freedom only returns when you take the responsibility back, even for things that genuinely weren't your fault to begin with. That's roughly the midpoint of the book's argument, and notice how each piece has been building on the last. Don't chase feelings directly, chase the right problems instead. The right problems come from the right values. The right values come from things within your control. And taking control of those values requires taking responsibility, full responsibility, for how you interpret and respond to your life, no matter who's at fault. Underneath all of it is the same original idea we started with: the things worth caring about are narrower and harder than most people are willing to admit. And the freedom you're looking for isn't on the other side of finally getting everything right. It's on the other side of finally being honest about what's actually worth your damns. You took responsibility back in the last chapter. Now the book asks the harder question: are you actually certain about anything? Because the 6th chapter goes after something most people never examine: the unconscious certainty they carry about who they are, what they deserve, and what the world owes them. Manson opens this section with a memory from his early 20s, a period he describes with unusual honesty: a stretch of nightlife consulting, casual relationships, a life built on the certainty that freedom meant collecting as many experiences as possible. It looked like confidence from the outside. From the inside, it was avoidance, dressed up as growth. The chapter's real argument is this: certainty is the enemy of growth. The moment you're sure you understand yourself completely, you stop being curious about whether you might be wrong. Manson calls this the importance of saying no to your own beliefs, treating your own convictions the way a scientist treats a hypothesis, something to be tested and potentially disproven, not something to be defended at all costs. Have you ever noticed how the people who seem most insufferable in an argument are rarely the ones who are uninformed? They're the ones who are completely certain. Certainty closes the door before any new information can walk through it. Manson's proposed fix isn't paralysis or constant doubt. It's something subtler: hold your beliefs the way you'd hold a tool, useful until proven otherwise, not an extension of your identity that needs defending whenever it's questioned. This matters because every value you've built your life around, every problem you've chosen to care about, was constructed using the beliefs you currently hold. If those beliefs are wrong, and you're too certain to notice, you'll keep solving the wrong problems with perfect confidence. Growth, real growth, requires staying just uncomfortable enough to keep questioning the architecture of your own mind. From there the book moves into one of its more clinical chapters: the failure of pure positivity, examined through the lens of what therapists actually know about behavior change. Manson brings in a concept from psychology: the idea that what you focus on is what you get more of. This sounds like classic self-help language, the kind found on inspirational posters, but Manson flips it into something darker and more useful. If you focus constantly on how unhappy you are, you generate more reasons to feel unhappy. If you focus on how angry you are at someone, you find more reasons to stay angry. The mind doesn't distinguish well between "I'm examining this feeling" and "I'm feeding this feeling." This is why constant venting, constant negative self-talk, constant analysis of your own flaws rarely produces healing. It produces more of exactly what you're trying to escape. And this is the part most positivity culture conveniently skips: the same law applies in reverse to forced positivity. If you spend all your energy trying to feel good, performing gratitude you don't actually feel, plastering over real pain with affirmations, you're still focusing entirely on your emotional state. You've just flipped the direction. Manson's actual prescription is almost anticlimactic in its simplicity: stop fixating on how you feel, and focus instead on what you value and what you're going to do about it. Feelings become a side effect of action aligned with values, not a goal to be manufactured directly. This is the backwards law again, wearing a different outfit. This sets up the book's most quietly profound chapter, the discussion of mortality, and what Manson calls the importance of constantly thinking about your own death. It sounds bleak on the surface. It isn't. He tells the story of meeting an old friend's grandmother near the end of her life, a woman who had survived war, loss, and decades of hardship, and who spoke about death not with fear but with a strange clarity. Her perspective wasn't morbid. It was liberating. When you actually sit with the fact that your time is finite, the noise falls away fast. The anxiety about what strangers think of you. The need to be exceptional. The grudges you've been nursing for years over things that, measured against the entire scope of a life, are almost embarrassingly small. Manson argues that death isn't the opposite of meaning, it's the source of it. Nothing matters in an infinite timeline, because infinite time means infinite opportunities to fix any mistake, to try any path, to undo any regret. It's scarcity that creates meaning. The fact that you don't get unlimited attempts is exactly what makes the attempts you do get worth taking seriously. Ask yourself honestly, if you knew, with total certainty, that you had 1 year left, what would instantly stop mattering? For most people, the answer reveals just how much of their daily anxiety was never about anything real to begin with. That awareness becomes the foundation for the book's final movement, practical, grounded, and deliberately less philosophical than what came before, because Manson wants to leave you with something usable, not just something to think about. He returns to relationships and makes a claim that tends to surprise people. The strength of a relationship is not measured by how much the two people love each other, but by how honestly they can disagree with each other. Couples who avoid conflict to preserve a feeling of harmony are usually building something fragile, not something strong. Real intimacy requires the willingness to say the uncomfortable thing, to risk the other person's disappointment, because avoiding that risk means you're managing an image of the relationship instead of actually living inside it. He extends this into a broader principle about commitment itself. Freedom, Manson argues, isn't the ability to keep all your options open forever. Real freedom comes from narrowing your options on purpose, committing fully to one relationship, one craft, one set of values, because commitment is what allows depth, and depth is where meaning actually lives. The person who keeps every door open, who refuses to fully commit to anything in case something better comes along, ends up with a life that's wide and shallow. Nothing in it goes deep enough to matter. And this is where the book finally closes its loop, returning to the same place it started, except you're standing somewhere different now. The opening pages told you that you've been taught something is wrong with you, that you should be more positive, more successful, more certain. The final pages tell you the opposite, and they mean it as a relief, not a punishment. You don't need to care about everything. You don't need to be exceptional, or certain, or constantly improving every visible part of your life. You need to choose, carefully and on purpose, the small number of things that actually deserve your attention, and then you need the discipline to stop wasting your finite supply of dams on everything else. That was never apathy. That was always the subtle art the title promised, caring deeply, but only about what's actually yours to carry.